Chapter 1. 2031 AD Doomsday. Base Area A Corpse Farm. Immorse wore a mask. He held a crowbar in one hand and a plate in the other. He walked slowly along the aisle. There were 3 palm-sized pieces of fresh pork on the plate. In this era, each person could only receive 3 steamed buns and 3 bowls of porridge every day. Pork was definitely a luxury food. Immorse came to the end of the aisle. He heard an excited roar coming from the room. Roar, roar. At the same time it was accompanied by the clattering of chains. He looked through the plexiglass on the door. He saw that the guy inside was tightly chained up. He opened the iron door and walked in with the fresh meat. At the same time he used a crowbar to hold the door to prevent it from being closed by the wind. In the room there was a zombie chained up. The zombie's left arm was broken. The flesh on its knee was pierced by the broken leg bone and a pale leg bone was exposed. Its nose was long gone, replaced by a horrible bloody hole. Half of its face was badly mutilated. It saw Immorse coming in and became even more excited. Its gray eyes were full of bloodthirsty light. Roar, it made a beast-like roar from its throat and pounced on Immorse. Clatter, the iron chain was suddenly straightened. Immorse subconsciously took a step back. He waited for a moment. The zombie's pounce was not so fierce. He reluctantly threw the fresh pork on the plate to the zombie. The zombie pounced on Immorse to no avail and roared a few more times. Then it lay on the ground, grabbed the meat and bit it like a beast. It ate until its mouth and chest were full of blood. Immorse could not help but swallow, shook his head and said, "What a waste." It had been more than 3 months since he transmigrated to the apocalypse. Every day he was sent to feed these experimental zombies. He sent meat to the zombies but he could not eat a single bite. A human's life was worse than a zombie's. He retreated from the room, removed the crowbar and closed the door. Next it was time to feed the pigs. In the corpse farm his daily job was to feed the pigs and then feed the zombies with pork. This was the least technical and most inconspicuous job in the entire base. However, Immorse was very calm. Raising zombies and pigs in the base was better than being sent out to catch zombies. The members of the corpse hunters looked glorious and worshipped. But if he wasn't careful he would lose his life. At the end of the world, survival was the way to go. After feeding the pigs, Immorse slowly strolled out of the corpses. Although his job was looked down upon, the advantage was that he had more free time. When he had time he would wander around to relieve his boredom. After exiting the corpse farm and turning right for 500 meters, they arrived at the laboratory. Just as Immorse strolled to the entrance of the laboratory, a voice suddenly rang out in his mind. It has been 100 days since the host transmigrated. The sign-in system has been activated. You can sign in now. Immorse immediately became excited. After transmigrating for 100 days he finally got the gold finger. He immediately tried to speak in his mind. System sign in. The system's voice sounded frowny face. Sign in successful. Sign in location. Laboratory. Sign in reward. 1 Titan Dragon Gene Enhancer. The next moment an item display panel similar to a game backpack appeared in his mind. Obviously this was the system's backpack. In the first compartment of the system backpack there was already a syringe. The syringe was filled with an aquamarine potion. When he focused on the potion, 2 lines of text appeared on the potion. Frowny face Titan Dragon Gene Enhancer. After injection, you will have the Titan Dragon Gene and greatly increase your strength. The first injection can unlock the Titan Dragon Claw. Immorse subconsciously looked around. Then he quickly walked back to the corpse farm, entered his room and closed the door. With a thought, the Titan Dragon Gene Enhancer appeared in his hand. He looked at the aquamarine potion in his hand. He licked his lips and suppressed the excitement in his heart. When his hands no longer trembled with excitement, he clenched his left fist. He held the gun-style syringe with his right hand and pressed it against his left arm. He exerted a little force with his right index finger and began to inject. He only felt a needle-like pain. Soon the injection was completed. At this moment, a vision suddenly appeared in Immorse's mind. He saw the shadow of a dragon that was hundreds of meters long. It was flapping its huge wings and sweeping across the sky. Roar, a long and oppressive dragon roar sounded. On the ground hundreds of beasts were terrified and crawling on the ground. This dragon, although only a shadow, was full of majestic and domineering long way. Immortal was so shocked that he couldn't come back to his senses for a long time. The shadow of the dragon circled in the sky 3 times. Then it swooped straight down towards Immortal. Seeing this, Immortal suddenly felt his hands and feet turn cold. He wanted to turn around and escape. But he found that he seemed to be imprisoned by some mysterious force and couldn't move at all. Whoosh! The shadow of the dragon swept down from the sky with a violent and unparalleled power. It was like a dark cloud that enveloped Immortal. It opened its huge mouth and suddenly swallowed Immortal. Immortal suddenly felt his vision go black. In the next moment he opened his eyes in horror. Only then did he realize that it was only a vision in his mind. But even so, his hands and feet had already turned cold. That feeling was too terrifying. It was just an injection and it was already so scary. Would he dare to inject it again in the future? Speaking of which, wasn't the Titan dragon an ancient dinosaur in his memory? Why did he see a flying dragon in his mind? Just as he was wondering, his body began to heat up. Just as he was thinking this, the black scales on his right arm slowly sank into the skin. His arm also began to return to its human appearance. His fingernails quickly shortened and straightened. His right hand also completely returned to its normal appearance. Phew! Immortal let out a long breath. Looking at his right hand, he was very excited. But when he saw the pieces of cloth on the ground, he smiled bitterly. This Titan dragon claw is awesome, but it's a waste of sleeves. It seemed that he had to prepare more clothes in the future. After obtaining the Titan dragon claw, he was excited for more than an hour. More than an hour later, he finally suppressed the excitement in his heart. This matter must not be known to others. He was just an ordinary person yesterday, and today he had such a fortuitous encounter. If others knew about this, it was likely to cause a lot of trouble. For the rest of the afternoon, Immortal fed the pigs and zombies as usual. He didn't show any abnormalities. But in his mind, from time to time, he would recall the images he saw before. That giant dragon and that oppressive dragon roar. Early the next morning, as soon as he opened his eyes, Immortal was full of anticipation and wanted to sign in. But there was a difference in the location. He thought about it and immediately got up. Without even washing his face, he came to the door of the zombie room. Rubbing his hands, he said in his mind, "System, sign in." The system replied instantly, frowny face, sign in successful. Sign in location, zombie room. Sign in reward, Virus X antibody. His attention was on the light blue medicine in his backpack. Virus X antibody. After injection, produce antibodies to Virus X, will not be infected and mutated into a zombie. Hearing this, Immortal was overjoyed. Virus X swept the world, turning most people into zombies. The laboratory next door did this for so long, wasn't it just to find antibodies? He didn't expect to get the Virus X antibody so easily when he signed in at the system. With joy, he injected the antibody into himself. His body seemed to have a slight change. But what exactly the change was, he couldn't tell. That morning when he went to feed the zombies, a thought flashed through his mind. If he was bitten by a zombie now, he wouldn't become a zombie, right? Chapter 2. Immortal looked at the zombie and a thought appeared in his mind. If he was bitten by this zombie now, he wouldn't be infected, right? But as soon as this thought flashed through his mind, he strangled it to death. It was better not to try this kind of thing. Never try it in this life. The next day, Immortal continued to sign in at the entrance of the laboratory. He also received the Titan Dragon Gene Enhancer. However, after this injection, although his strength had increased a lot. But the same phenomenon did not appear in his mind again. After this injection, his left arm would also turn into a dragon claw. But it didn't. He couldn't help but ask, "System, why can't my left arm turn into a dragon claw this time?" The system replied, frowny face, with the host's current physical strength, it can only withstand the power of one dragon claw. When the host's body is strengthened to a certain extent, the dragon claw on the left arm can be unlocked. Immortal nodded. That makes sense. Then he asked expectantly, "Then when my body is strong enough, my entire body can turn into a dragon? Is it the dragon phantom I see in my mind?" The system replied, frowny face, yes. Immortal's eyes sparkled when he heard this. He seemed to have seen the day when he could transform into a Titan dragon. Roaming the sky. With a dragon's roar, all beasts were terrified. For the next year, Immorse continued to sign in every day. The rewards he received were different at different locations. Most of the things he signed in next to the laboratory were Titan Dragon Gene Enhancers. But there were exceptions. Next to the laboratory. System sign in. Sign in successful. Sign in location. Laboratory. Sign in reward. Mutated Gecko Gene Enhancer. Immorse focused on the gene enhancer in his backpack. Mutated Gecko Gene Enhancer. After injection, broken limbs can be regrown. He immediately returned to his residence and injected this gene enhancer. He was secretly happy. From now on, even if he lost his arms or legs, they could grow back. Other than that, he would receive recovery potions when he signed in at the hospital. After using the recovery potion, his stamina could be recovered quickly. If he was injured, it could also speed up the healing of the wound. When he signed in at the base cafeteria, he received a lot of fresh food. If he gets it from the tap room, he will get 1 bottle of clean mineral water. At the end of the world, these things were even more precious than gold. If they were to leave the base in the future, they wouldn't have to worry about food and water. In the past year, he had already injected more than 30 gene enhancers. He didn't know how much his strength had increased. Anyway, he had accidentally knocked over the bed and crushed a glass several times already. Of course, he would occasionally receive special things from signing in. For example, one day he signed in beside the slaughterhouse. Sign in successful. Sign in location, slaughterhouse. Sign in reward, 1 bloodthirsty corpse slayer. He checked his backpack. Bloodthirsty zombie slayer. The moment it comes into contact with a zombie, it will absorb the zombie's blood. Convert it into a strong acid and release it. The stronger the power, the more acid the blade can convert. Immorse had secretly tested this knife when he was feeding the zombies that day. He quietly made a small cut on the zombie's leg. As a result, under the corrosion of the strong acid, the wound quickly enlarged. In the end, he could see the bones inside. One could imagine that if he slashed the zombie fiercely, it would probably be able to directly cut the zombie in half. Another strange item was the brain cell enhancer. This thing could stimulate brain cells and strengthen brain waves. Thus, it could enhance one's perception. After injecting the brain cell enhancer once, he felt refreshed and his eyes clear. Within a radius of 10 meters, even if 2 mosquitoes were doing something shameless, he could clearly sense it with his eyes closed. However, although his strength had far exceeded that of ordinary people, he still had no intention of exposing himself. Instead, he still worked diligently every day just like other ordinary people. With the system, he had to go out and show off. Come on. It was already the end of the world. What was there to show off and show off? Survival was the way to go. Therefore, it was better to make a fortune quietly. In the blink of an eye, another half a month had passed. On this day, after he finished feeding the zombies, he passed by the training ground of the corpse hunters. There were a few corpse hunters on the training ground. They were doing strength training while discussing something. When they saw Immorse pass by, they only glanced at him and continued to discuss. They were the corpse hunters, the strongest in the base. Immorse was just a pig farmer, the weakest in the base. Therefore, when they saw Immorse, they completely treated him as air. One of the team members was doing squats while saying, "Did you know that yesterday the captain punched out 270 kilograms?" One of the team members suddenly exclaimed, "Damn, 270 kilograms? That's 100 kilograms more than me." Another team member also said with a face full of surprise, "There are 20 corpse hunters in the base, and the strongest of the other teams can only punch out 244 kilograms. Compared to that, the captain is really an animal." Hearing this, Immorse's heart slightly moved. In order not to expose himself, he had not tested his strength before. He did not know how strong he was now. Why not find a chance to try? Seeing that Immorse didn't leave, the other members of the corpse hunters burst into laughter one after another. Although they did not say anything, it could be seen from their expressions. They didn't even spare a glance at Immorse, a pig farmer. They were talking about real men. Would a pig farmer be able to understand him? Immorse did not mind. He rubbed his nose and slowly left. At noon that day, Immorse came to the cafeteria. Seeing the steamed buns and porridge in the cafeteria, he felt that he had no appetite. He was about to throw up after eating these things every day. Fortunately, he had a trick up his sleeve. He said in his mind, "System sign in. Sign in successful. Sign in location. Base cafeteria. Sign in reward. 2 bottles of beer, 5 barbecue skewers. After receiving this reward, Immorse walked out of the cafeteria with a satisfied smile on his face. He bumped into his colleague from the corpse farm. Seeing that Immorse was about to leave, he asked curiously, "Why not eating any more?" Immorse shook his head and said, "It's steamed buns and porridge every day. I have no appetite." His colleague smiled and said, "After all, the environment is like this now. Those who can stutter are thankful. Just make do." Immorse let out a sigh and said, "Sigh, I'm not eating anymore." Then he left the cafeteria and returned to his room. He closed the door and drew the curtains. He took out beer and meat skewers from his space backpack. His saliva was already flowing out. He opened the beer and gulped down 2 mouthfuls. Burp. He let out a long burp. Awesome. Then he picked up the meat skewers and stuffed his mouth full of meat. "Beer and skewers, I missed you so much." While the others received a fixed amount of steamed buns and porridge, Immorse was drinking and eating skewers. If others knew, they would probably want to strangle Immorse to death. After eating and drinking, he put the iron skewers and beer bottles into his system backpack. He would find a way to throw them away in the future. He burped and stroked his stomach. He left his room with satisfaction and left the corpse farm. He went to the gym. At this time, everyone had gone to eat, so there was no one in the gym. There was a dynamometer by the window of the gym. The dynamometer was fixed to the ground by 4 screws. The maximum value of the dynamometer was 1,000 kilograms. He had seen the corpse hunters test their strength on it before. Most of them were between 150 and 200 kilograms. He looked out of the window. There was no one nearby. He clenched his right hand into a fist and took a deep breath. He paused for a moment, then punched the target. Bang! There was a loud noise. The dynamometer seemed to have been hit by a flying boulder. It flew backward in an instant. Crash! It directly smashed through the window. After flying for another 30 meters or so toward the training ground, it finally stopped. At this time, the dynamometer had already been twisted into a fried dough twist. Immorse stared at the dynamometer blankly, then at the glass on the ground. Finally, he looked at the 4 screws on the ground that had been torn apart by a huge force. This power seemed to be a little terrifying. The people who were eating in the cafeteria far away heard the commotion and rushed out one by one. Chapter 3. Everyone who was eating in the cafeteria heard the loud noise and rushed out. Immorse saw this and quickly ran away from the window. He looked around and walked to the corner of the gym. He picked up a broom and a dustpan and went to the door. He pretended to come in to clean. He had to come and clean the gym every other day. Today was the day to clean. The people who ran out of the cafeteria saw the strength tester that had been twisted into a fried dough twist and immediately cried out in alarm. "What the F***ck, what kind of power is this? What the F***ck is this Godzilla?" The tall man in the lead was the captain of Zone A's body hunters. His face was filled with shock as he looked at the twist-shaped dynamometer. Then he looked at the window of the gym 30 meters away. He shouted to the others, "Let's go check it out." Everyone followed the captain and rushed to the gym. When they arrived at the door, they saw Immorse holding a broom in one hand and a dustpan in the other, standing there in a daze. They all ignored Immorse. They ran straight into the gym. However, there was not even a ghost in the gym. Everyone looked around the gym twice and then a few more times. They still did not find any suspicious person or creature. Finally, the captain turned around and looked at Immorse, who was still standing there in a daze. He asked loudly, "Did you see it?" Immorse shook his head in bewilderment. The captain looked at the broom and dustpan in Immorse's hands. Then he turned around and ignored him. The others also turned around and continued to look for clues in the gym. After carefully inspecting the scene, one of the team members touched the 4-finger-thick screw fracture on the ground. He said in shock, "Captain, the dynamometer's effective range is below 1,000 kilograms. Can withstand up to 1,500 kilograms of force. What is this thing that can blow the dynamometer away and twist it like a fried dough twist? No matter what it is, it can't be human." The captain made his judgment. The others looked at each other. Their captain's strength was only 270 kilograms. The captain looked serious and said to the body hunters, "Sound the alarm and tell everyone to stay in the room. Don't wander around. Body hunters, follow me to find that guy." You must be careful. The team members responded and ran out of the gym. When everyone passed by Immorse, they ignored him again. Only the captain of the corpse hunters shouted at him. Go back and hide. Immorse seemed to have regained his senses. He hurriedly threw away the broom and dustpan and ran towards the corpse field. She returned to her room and closed the door. He let out a long sigh. He laughed bitterly and helplessly. He was afraid of causing a commotion, so he only used 70% of his strength in that punch. He didn't expect things to turn out this way. If others found out that he was the one who caused this, wouldn't they treat him like a monster? Just the thought of catching them and slicing them up for research was terrifying. Of course, they might also think of themselves as heroes. In that case, he would definitely become a member of the corpse hunters. Every day he would go outside the base to catch zombies. If there was any danger, he had to be at the forefront. That would be troublesome. He was indeed very strong, but no matter how strong he was, would he be able to kill thousands of zombies outside? Therefore, it was better to stay in the base obediently. Anyway, there was the sign-in system. Wouldn't it be better to stay in the base for 8 to 10 years and sign in until he was invincible? The soldiers outside investigated for an entire afternoon, but they didn't find any clues. They could only send a few more patrol teams to strengthen their defenses. At noon the next day, Immorse came to the cafeteria. There was already a group of armed soldiers at the entrance of the cafeteria, vigilantly watching the surroundings. Immorse naturally knew that this was the result of his punch. He shook his head secretly. He entered the cafeteria. A bowl of porridge, a steamed bun, and a small plate of pickled vegetables. This was dinner. In the apocalypse, where resources were scarce, resources were prioritized for the army and the laboratory. Ordinary civilians almost always had this kind of food. After getting the food, he came to the table. A few 15 or 16-year-old children next to him subconsciously moved away from him. Some people even fanned their noses and frowned. Hey, pig farmers, stay away. You smell like a pig pen. Do you want people to eat? Immorse was too lazy to pay attention to them and focused on eating. Pretentious? Face-slapping? Childish? Compared to their strength now, it was like a boxing champion compared to a 3-year-old child. Should a boxing champion be ridiculed by a 3-year-old child? Your golden belt is ugly, and have to be pretentious and face-slapped back? This steamed bun and porridge couldn't be compared to kebabs with beer. It would be great if he could sign a few more kebabs. While Immorse was eating with his head bowed, the discussion of the teenagers beside him could be heard. Hey, have you all heard? Martial law was suddenly imposed yesterday because a mysterious creature appeared in the gym. Nonsense, of course I heard. That mysterious creature is terrifyingly powerful. The dynamometer in the gym was directly uprooted and thrown out of the window. I don't know what kind of monster it is. My dad is a member of the body hunters. I went to take a look today. 4 wrist-thick screws were directly torn off. The dynamometer was thrown out of the window more than 70 meters. The strength, if I had this strength, my dad would have let me join the body hunters. You're insulting that mysterious creature. If you had his strength, don't even mention joining the body hunters. I'm afraid the captain of the body hunters will kneel and beg you to join. Another teenager also laughed. Maybe he'll even beg you to be the captain. Saying so, he actually imitated the captain of the body hunters to perfection. The loud voice imitated. On behalf of the 100,000 people in the base, I sincerely invite you to join the body hunters. If you don't join, I'll kneel and never get up. Ah! The group of teenagers suddenly roared with laughter. The son of the body hunters raised his chin and proudly said, Since you're so sincere in your invitation, then I'll reluctantly accept. That expression, that demeanor. As if he was the one who sent the dynamometer flying with a punch. Immorse secretly shook his head. These guys are really childish. Would the captain of the body hunters be so humble? But then again, if the captain knew that he was the one who sent the dynamometer flying with a punch, he might very well try his best to invite him to join the body hunters. Being a vice-captain shouldn't be a problem. But it's safer to stay in the base. After all, this is the apocalypse. After eating, Immorse came back from the cafeteria. When he passed by the body hunter's captain's office, he vaguely heard voices inside. Now that his genes have been strengthened dozens of times, not only has his strength increased, his hearing has also greatly improved. He heard the body hunter's loud voice say, Still haven't found it? The vice captain's voice was a bit feminine. He answered, "Not yet. Captain, what kind of monster do you think it is, to have such great strength? To be able to tear the screws and twist the dynamometer into a fried dough twist?" The body hunter's loud voice said, "Who knows, just be careful for the next few days." After saying that, he sighed again. The vice captain's voice was a bit feminine as he asked, "Captain, what's wrong?" The captain said, "I'm just thinking if that kind of great strength was used on our team members. Then when we go out to hunt corpses, wouldn't it be easy?" Hearing that, the vice captain was also interested. He said with a bit of femininity, "Captain, I thought that young people like to fantasize. I didn't expect that you, the captain of the body hunters, also like to fantasize. But Captain, you're right, if we have that kind of power, where can't we go outside the base? Why do we have to stay in this base all day?" The captain's loud voice came, "I'm not thinking that much, I'm just thinking if we have that kind of great strength, the success rate of hunting corpses will greatly increase and the casualty rate will be greatly reduced. We can even achieve 0 casualties. And I also have a selfish motive. My son is guarding the first line of defense. That's the most dangerous place and the casualty rate is the highest. If he can get that kind of power." At the end of his words, the captain smiled bitterly. "Unfortunately, we don't know what kind of creature it is." Hearing this, Immorse just smiled and shook his head. Then he leisurely strolled towards the corpse farm. In the next few days, Immorse still signed in every day. His strength was still increasing. Now the crowbar in his hand was like a rubber band. He could pull it however he wanted and pinch it however he wanted. At the same time, the news in the entire base had been very tense. Everyone spread the news that a mysterious creature suddenly appeared in the base. A large number of body hunters and city guards began to appear in the vicinity. They were looking for the mysterious creature. However, 10 days passed and there were no clues. Immorse, as the person closest to the scene of the incident, was naturally called in many times for questioning. But Immorse only had one answer. "As soon as I reached the door, I heard a loud noise inside. I was so scared that my legs went soft." Other than that, he didn't know anything. Those who asked eventually waved their hands impatiently. Go, 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 raise your pigs." Immorse nodded as if relieved of a heavy burden. Oh. In the end, this matter became the most mysterious incident in the entire base. It also became a hot topic in people's leisure time. No matter where Immorse went, he could hear people talking. How strong was that mysterious creature? How strong was it? In order not to appear too different, Immorse often leaned in to listen to these discussions when he heard them. Several colleagues in the body farm would talk about it almost every day. At this time, 2 colleagues were in the middle of a heated conversation. Seeing Immorse walk over, a colleague said, "Immorse, who do you think has the strongest combat power in the entire base?" Immorse said, "Needless to say, it must be the body hunter captain. He used to be a special forces soldier." The colleague shook his head. "I'm afraid you haven't heard of the mysterious creature in the gym. The body hunter captain is very strong, but his punch only weighs more than 200 kilograms. What about the mysterious creature?" Speaking of this, the colleague said with an exaggerated expression, "It directly twisted the dynamometer into a fried dough twist. Don't you think it's awesome? It's crazy." When Immorse heard someone praise him, he felt a little happy in his heart. He said modestly, "It's okay." The colleague rolled his eyes at Immorse. "What do you mean by okay? Your standards are too high, aren't they?" The other colleague curled his lips and said, "If this is okay, then tell me, what do you mean by strong?" Immorse thought seriously and said, "Does playing with a crowbar like a rubber band count?" The 2 of them glared at him. Go, go, go play somewhere else. We can't talk about the same thing as you. We're not on the same channel at all." Immorse nodded. "Oh." He turned and left. He sighed in his heart. The moral degeneration of the world is really not what it used to be. No one would believe him if he told the truth. Chapter 4. When the mysterious creature incident gradually faded away, life returned to normal. Feeding pigs and zombies every day. Cleaning the gym every other day. When sleeping at night, he would often dream of the Titan dragon. Immorse was very satisfied with such a life. In the apocalypse, he could sleep well at night and eat well during the day. Occasionally, he could drink beer and eat skewers. He would often have sweet dreams. What could be more pleasant than this? Of course, he still insisted on signing in every day. He had already signed in to many of the more important places in the base. Signing in at the training ground, he received various combat skills. Now, in terms of combat skills, there was probably no one in the base who could match him. Signing in at the sentry tower, he received Lookout Eye. It allowed him to see further and clearer when he was on the lookout. Signing in next to the base's ammunition warehouse, he received Firearms Encyclopedia. After learning this skill, his understanding of firearms had reached its peak. The performance, structure, range, accuracy, bullet speed, power, and so on of any firearm, there was nothing he didn't know. Signing in next to the shooting training ground, he received Gun King's skill. After learning this skill, his marksmanship was not inferior to any sniper. Of course, the surroundings of the laboratory were the places he signed in the most. Most of the things he signed in were gene enhancers. But occasionally there were other things. System sign in. Sign in successful. Sign in location. Laboratory. Sign in reward. Virus X sensor injection. He checked in the system backpack. Virus X sensor injection. After injection, you can sense the virus X within a radius of 100 meters. After injecting this virus X sensor injection, even from his room, Immorse could sense the zombies in the zombies' room. At the door of the laboratory, he could sense the virus X samples in the laboratory's cold storage. This made Immorse, who had always been cautious, very happy. With this ability, he knew where the virus was and where it wasn't. In case he went outside the base in the future, he could avoid the zombies in advance. Of course, the thing he got the most from signing in at the laboratory was still the Titan Dragon Gene Enhancer. But as his strength became stronger and stronger, his speed became faster and faster. The effect of the Titan Dragon Gene Enhancer was also getting weaker and weaker. It seemed that his body was about to be strengthened to the limit. He was always looking forward to unlocking the dragon claw on his left arm when his body was strengthened to the limit. At the same time, the number of times he received the brain cell enhancer had also increased. Now that 2 years had passed, he had been injected with the brain cell enhancer more than 50 times. The effect was very obvious. Now his brain waves were much stronger. It could easily sense any movement within a radius of 100 meters. Moreover, what excited him the most was that after his brain cells were strengthened to a certain extent, he could actually use his brain waves to control things. In other words, telekinesis. Immorse called this psychokinesis. The first thing he did after realizing that he could move objects through space was a little childish. Using telekinesis to feed himself, Zhou Xian opened his mouth and willed. The skewer automatically entered his mouth. The metal skewer was automatically drawn. The second thing he did was to use his telekinesis to dress her. He stretched out his hands. With a thought, the clothes floated into the air. He tried to wrap it around his body. But the clothes were too soft. Moreover, if he wanted to put it on, he had to use his telekinesis to control every part of the clothes. Straighten the sleeves. Lift up the neckline. The clothes were stretched open. Multitasking. The difficulty increased exponentially. The clothes were either put on his head or wrapped around his waist. But after more than 10 days of repeated practice, he could skillfully use his telekinesis to wear clothes. Until now, it could be said that he had truly achieved one sentence. Stretching out his hand for clothes and opening his mouth for food. Gradually, as he injected more and more brainwave enhancers, his telekinesis also became stronger and stronger. In the beginning, he could only use his telekinesis to move paper within a meter. And as time passed, after he injected the 53rd brain cell enhancer, he could already use his telekinesis to control anything within 100 meters that was less than 10 kilograms. This made Immorse extremely excited. While others were still struggling to survive, he had already entered a well-off society. Today was the 800th day since Immorse transmigrated. When he woke up early in the morning, he strolled to the entrance of the laboratory. He said in his mind, "System sign in." This had long become his habit. The system's voice sounded frowny face sign in successful. Sign in location. Laboratory. Sign in reward. Titan Dragon Gene Enhancer X1. Back at his residence. As usual, he injected the gene enhancer into his body. But this time after the injection, his body didn't feel as hot as before. After waiting for a full 10 minutes, his body didn't change at all. Immorse knew that his body should have been strengthened to the limit. This made him a little excited. Should he unlock the dragon claw on his left arm? However, reality gave him a slap in the face. He didn't unlock the dragon claw on his left arm. He couldn't help but ask in his mind, "System, why didn't you unlock the dragon claw on my left arm?" The system replied instantly, frowny face, "Only by breaking through the limit can you unlock the dragon claw on your left arm." Immorse asked again, "How do I break through?" The system replied instantly, frowny face, "When the time comes, the host will naturally know." Immorse curled his lips. "Is there any difference between that and not saying anything?" The system was silent. Immorse could only shake his head. His system rarely spoke. As long as it was silent, it would be difficult to ask anything in a short period of time. However, he believed that with the sign-in system, this limit would be broken sooner or later. It was just a matter of time. Just as he was looking forward to it, an ear-piercing alarm suddenly sounded. D. The alarm obviously came from the laboratory more than 200 meters away. At the same time, a broadcast sounded. "Alarm! All personnel stay in the room and close the doors and windows. No one is allowed to go out before the alarm is lifted. Alarm! All personnel stay in the room and close the doors and windows. No one is allowed to go out before the alarm is lifted." Immorse thought for a moment. The alarm in the laboratory had sounded several times before. Most of them were accidentally infected by the virus. However, there were no major problems. Those who were infected would be caught quickly. And in order to prevent accidents from happening, a team of corpses lived not far from the laboratory. There was also an army of 100 people stationed there. So he didn't need to worry about it. Since the alarm didn't allow him to go out casually, he was happy to be free. At the same time, the laboratory was already in a mess. Those researchers screamed and rushed out of the laboratory. Behind them, boom, the wall of the laboratory was directly smashed through. A zombie jumped out of the hole in the wall that was smashed through. This was obviously not an ordinary zombie. It was more than 3 meters tall. Its body was strong and its muscles bulged like a hill. And it was extremely fast, 5 meters in one step. After catching up with a researcher, it stretched out its right hand. In the next moment, the right hand actually made a cracking sound and quickly deformed. 5 fingers quickly elongated. It turned into a sharp claw more than a foot long. Then the claw pierced into the back of the researcher's heart. "Ah!" The researcher opened his mouth and screamed, struggling desperately. The army stationed here had already rushed over. When they saw the 3-meter-tall mutant zombie, they were all horrified. When the mutated zombie saw so many living people, it was like a hungry wolf seeing a flock of sheep. It roared excitedly to the sky. Roar! Then it threw away the researcher in its hand and ran towards these soldiers. Its speed was extremely fast, almost reaching 20 meters per second. Da-da-da-da-da-da. The rifles in the hands of these soldiers spat out tongues of fire. They hit the mutated zombie. The mutated zombie's chest was instantly mangled. But soon the mutated zombie roared. Its skin was actually changing rapidly. Pieces of palm-sized plate armor began to grow. This plate armor quickly covered its body and limbs. The bullets hit the mutated zombie's chest, but a series of sparks appeared and made the sound of metal clashing. Ding ding ding, ding ding ding. When these more than 100 soldiers saw this, they were all shocked. He hurriedly shouted, "Rocket!" The soldier carrying the rocket launcher hurriedly took 2 steps forward. Whoosh! The rocket dragged a long tail flame and blasted the mutated zombie's body. Boom! Flames shot in all directions, smoke rose. Half of the mutated zombie's shoulder was blown off. However, in the next moment, the flesh and blood in the gap of its shoulder quickly squirmed. In just more than 10 seconds, it was directly restored. Seeing this, the soldiers present all widened their eyes one by one. Not only did the rocket not kill it, but it also angered it. It looked up to the sky and roared, "Roar!" Then with a step, it sped up and ran towards these soldiers. The captain hurriedly shouted, "Hide!" All the soldiers scattered and hid behind the bunker. However, the mutated zombie was extremely strong and it seemed that no bunker could stop it. Its right arm turned into a huge horny fist with a diameter of 0.5 meter. Punched through the wall. The soldiers hiding behind the wall even had their heads blown off. Its left arm turned into a tentacle more than 10 meters long. It directly pierced into a soldier's body. Then the tentacle instantly split like a flower. The soldier was torn into several pieces. Flesh and blood splattered. It was a tragic sight. When the captain of these soldiers saw this, he hurriedly shouted with a walkie-talkie, "The laboratory is requesting support quickly." While speaking, his captain's abdomen had been scratched by the mutated zombie's sharp claws. Then the mutated zombie began to kill. In just 2 minutes, more than 100 soldiers at the scene were killed by it. It was completely unstoppable. And even if people were not dead, as long as they were touched by its sharp claws, tentacles, or sharp teeth, they would be turned into zombies in a short period of time. These zombie soldiers one by one got up from the ground. With a beast-like roar in their throats, they rushed towards the uninjured people. For a time, these 100 soldiers were completely wiped out. The scene was a mess, broken limbs and broken bodies were everywhere. At this time, the corpse hunting team that went out to perform the task finally rushed back. However, when they saw the mutated zombie and the dozens of zombie soldiers, they all looked extremely dignified. This was the hinterland of the base, where a large number of civilians lived. The armed forces were near the base wall, and it would take at least 20 minutes to rush over. How many people could these zombies infect in 20 minutes? They didn't even dare to think about it. The captain barely calmed down and roared, "Others, follow me to kill the ordinary zombies. Sniper, I'll leave the mutated zombie to you." Before the voice faded, bang, there was a loud noise. The mutated zombie's face was suddenly badly mutilated. However, this mutated zombie did not fall. Instead, it glanced in the direction of the bullet. With a roar, it turned around and drilled into the green belt next to it. On the roof in the distance, the sniper's heart was extremely horrified and said, "What kind of monster is this?" His gun was an anti-material sniper rifle. The larger the caliber, the more powerful it was. Generally, when it hit a zombie, the zombie would be directly blown into 2 pieces. If it hit the head, the upper body would be blown into meat paste. But this mutated zombie, when it was shot in the head, only its face was blown up. Its movement was not affected at all. And from the scope, he clearly saw that the wound on the zombie's face was healing quickly. At this time, the captain saw the escape route of the mutated zombie, and suddenly his face changed. "It's going to the zombie farm." Chapter 5. It went to the corpse farm. The captain of the corpse hunters roared. All the team members heard this and their faces suddenly changed. The corpse farm was not the main point. The main point was next to the corpse farm was the school field. Although there were not many students in the school in the apocalypse, but there were still more than 100. The most terrifying thing was next to the school there was a hospital, 2 factories and a residential area. In total there were more than 5,000 people. Not sure if those guys had a problem with their brains when choosing the location of the laboratory. They actually chose such a place. In fact, the person who chose the location was not to blame. The apocalypse came and the living space of human beings was sharply compressed. Many times it was not considered so carefully. Even if it was considered, the conditions may not necessarily allow it. At this time, the captain saw that the mutated zombie had already jumped over the wall of the corpse farm. His eyes were bloodshot and his voice was almost hoarse. He shouted loudly, "You 3 take care of the zombies here. The others, follow me to chase the mutated zombie. Snipers, if you have a chance, shoot at the mutated zombie." With that, he led 15 team members and madly chased towards the corpse farm. However, the more he chased, the more his heart sank. With the strength of the mutated zombie, even if they caught up, they would not be able to stop it. At this time in the corpse farm, Immorse was tasting the fragrant tea that he got from signing in this morning. In the apocalypse, no one planted tea anymore. Now, to be able to drink a mouthful of hot tea was simply a great enjoyment. Immorse took a sip of tea and smacked his lips in satisfaction. But at this time, his Virus X sensing ability was suddenly triggered. He sensed that a Virus X carrier appeared in the corpse farm. This was not a good thing. He put the teacup into the system backpack. He opened the door. He saw that in the courtyard of the corpse farm, a guy more than 3 meters tall had just jumped in. The right hand was a claw. The left hand was a tentacle. The body also had a tortoiseshell-like plate armor. He could not help but be stunned. What the hell was this? Those guys in the laboratory were always doing this and that. They did not make antibodies but made such a monster. Messing around. Next to the corpse farm was the school. There were also hospitals, factories and residential areas around. If those people were infected, his comfortable days would be over. It seemed like he had no choice but to make a move today. At the same time, several hundred meters away from the corpse farm, the captain watched as the colossal zombie jumped over the wall of the zombie farm. His heart was filled with despair. The mutated zombie was obviously running towards the school. The captain's eyes were bloodshot. The veins on his temples bulged. As he chased forward like a madman, he roared in a hoarse voice. "Snipers, open fire, King open fire." If there was still a glimmer of hope to stop the colossal zombie now, it would be impossible. In that case, they could only rely on the sniper to attract the monster's attention. However, the sniper on the roof sounded even more desperate. "Captain, it's too fast and we can't see anything. No vision." These 4 words were like a bolt from the blue, exploding on the heads of all the members. Their hearts sank to the bottom of the valley. It was over. If the school was infected, the nearby hospitals and residential areas would soon be infected as well. The entire armed forces of the base were on the periphery. Who would have thought that the center of the base would suddenly explode? The entire base was finished. At the same time, the mutated zombie's target was the school. It had a keen sense of hearing and smell. It could hear a large number of human voices in the school next to the zombie farm. It could smell a large amount of human scent there. This made it very excited. Its eyes were blood red. It was only 100 meters away from the school's wall. Suddenly, a white figure appeared. It blocked in front of the mutated zombie. This white figure was wearing a white t-shirt. In this cold winter, he only wore a t-shirt and stood in the yard. It could be seen that this person was different. This person was Immorse. His body had been strengthened to the limit, and his cold resistance had long been far beyond that of ordinary people. He could play in the snow in a tank top and shorts for 3 or 9 days and not feel cold at all. Of course, he had never done so. He stood in front of the 3-meter-tall mutated zombie and seemed a little small. When the mutated zombie saw a living person, it was even more excited that its eyes were blood red. Roar! It let out a beast-like roar from its throat. It strode towards Immorse. 1 step, 20 meters. When it arrived in front of Immorse, it swung its 1-foot-long right claw. It stabbed straight towards Immorse's face. Immorse said in his heart that when you hit someone, don't hit their face. This mutated zombie didn't care about martial ethics. Then his body gently moved to one side, avoiding the stab. At the same time, he lifted his right foot lightly. It imprinted on the mutated zombie's abdomen plate armor. Bang! The mutated zombie suddenly flew up. At an extremely fast speed, it flew more than 10 meters to the side. Rumble! It crashed into the pig shed. It crashed into the wall, creating a large gap with a diameter of 5 meters. It fell far away outside the zombie farm. When the pig shed collapsed, the dozens of pigs in the pig shed became excited. They all snorted and fled outside. Immorse's face suddenly changed. Oh no! Losing a pig would cause him to be scolded. This time more than a dozen ran out at once. He would probably be scolded by the leader. The sniper on the distant roof saw the mutated zombie as if it was hit by a train. It crashed through the wall and flew more than 20 meters. Looking carefully, the mutated zombie's chest plate armor was shattered into several pieces. He couldn't help but be stunned. What was so strong? He quickly turned the muzzle and looked inside the zombie farm. It just happened that a row of trees blocked his line of sight, so he still couldn't see. But such a strong force still made his mind flash a thought. Could it be that a year ago the strong creature that blew away the dynamometer appeared again? At this time, after the mutated zombie was blown away, the plate armor on its chest was shattered into several pieces. But the zombie didn't feel pain at all. Moreover, Immorse's kick had stimulated its ferocious nature. It roared to the sky. The sound shook a radius of thousands of meters. In the roar, its body changed again. The flesh on its back split from both sides. A pair of claws stretched out from it, tearing this flesh. A new body crawled out from the crack. This new body had no skin. The muscles were directly exposed. The surface of the muscles was all sticky blood-red liquid. Soon this new body grew rapidly. In just more than 10 seconds, it grew to more than 5 meters long and nearly 3 meters tall. The limbs became like the claws of a beast. The back grew like a stegosaurus. A 3-meter-long, thick, barbed tail grew from its tail. Its entire body looked like a 5-meter-long skinless beast. Only that huge head still had some remnants of the shape of a human. Ayo, roar, When it roared to the sky, the sharp teeth in its mouth were clearly visible. The bloody red tongue more than a meter long was terrifying. The saliva on the side of its mouth shone brightly under the sun. The sniper saw this scene from the scope and couldn't help but change his expression. What the hell is this monster? The zombie hunters also saw this scene from afar. They also exclaimed one after another. F***CK. What the hell? Sniper, kill it. There was a trace of horror in the captain's voice. After all, the zombie hunters dealt with zombies all day long and saw a lot of zombies. But those were just ordinary zombies. They had never seen such a monster. The sniper received the order and responded. Yes. Then he aimed at the head of the zombie after the second mutation and pulled the trigger. Bang! There was a loud sound. The bullet flew for more than 300 meters and hit the target. However, this time, it only left a small hole in its head. And this small hole had already recovered in a few seconds. The mutated zombie ignored the sniper. Its target was the human in the courtyard. It opened its 4 claws and jumped. It was more than 30 meters. It ran towards the courtyard at top speed. Everyone saw the zombie after the second mutation run towards the school again. In their hearts, the despair once again overwhelmed them. In the courtyard of the zombie farm, Immorse looked at the 5-meter-long monster. He was also slightly surprised. Is it a second mutation? Then he moved his mind. A knife appeared in his hand. This knife was 2 meters long. There was a trace of quenched blue in the black. The blade looked like one. But if one looked carefully, they would find that it was composed of many components. It was very technological. The entire knife was made of metal. But under the sun it didn't reflect light. This was the reward Immorse received for signing in, Bloodthirsty Zombie Slayer. Chapter 6. At this time, the zombie after the second mutation was like a huge rhinoceros. It had already crashed through the courtyard wall and rushed into the yard. It rushed straight at Immorse. A bright light flashed across Immorse's clear eyes. When the mutated zombie was 50 meters away from him, he suddenly exploded. 1 step. 50 meters. His whole body was like a white shadow. He instantly rose into the air. The bloodthirsty zombie executioner in his hand brazenly slashed down. Under the sun, the 2-meter-long zombie executioner drew a large fan-shaped afterimage. It instantly sank into the head of the mutated zombie. Whoosh! There was a soft sound. Immorse landed on the ground and slowly withdrew his blade. The mutated zombie fell to the ground with a bang. Moreover, it fell directly into 2 halves. One slash actually split a 5-meter-long, nearly 3-meter-tall mutated zombie into 2 halves. Immorse couldn't help but think of a famous saying. The power of one slash was so terrifying. And a large amount of strong acid was corroding the mutated zombie's body. Blood-red foam was constantly coming out. A faint green smoke rose. A stench suddenly filled the air. After the second mutation, this zombie originally had an extremely strong self-healing ability. Its wound was constantly wriggling, trying to heal itself. However, its self-healing speed was so weak in front of the strong acid. In just over 10 seconds, more than half of its head was corroded. At this point, its self-healing speed finally slowed down. After a few seconds, when its head was completely corroded, it finally lost its self-healing ability. It was completely declared dead. Immorse slowly shook his head. I didn't even use my strength and you fell. He originally thought that if he couldn't kill this mutated zombie with one slash, he would try using the Titan Dragon Claw. However, before he could show the Titan Dragon Claw, this guy was actually killed in 1 hit. Sighed the sorrow of being invincible. He looked down at the bloodthirsty zombie executioner in his hand. There was not a drop of blood on the black blade. This blade was definitely the nemesis of zombies. At this time he heard the messy footsteps outside the wall. He quickly put the blade back into the system space. His feet touched the ground. After a few ups and downs he jumped over the wall. From the system backpack he took out a coat and put it on. At the same time, the zombie hunters had already rushed into the zombie farm. In their hearts, one was more desperate than the other. They knew that the entire base was probably finished. Today was the real end for all of them. Although their legs were still moving forward, their hearts were already cold. However, when they ran into the yard of the zombie farm, they were all stunned at the same time. The disappointment in their eyes gradually turned into surprise. The yard was filled with a stench. In the middle of the courtyard, a huge corpse was lying there quietly. It seemed to be the corpse of a zombie that had gone through the second mutation. Dead. What's going on? How did it suddenly die? Everyone's eyes were wide open. You look at me, I look at you. They had seen the double-mutated zombie rushing towards the zombie farm. Then in less than 30 seconds they followed in. They didn't expect to see this scene soon. Their surprise turned into joy. The mutated zombie was dead, but the school was saved. That was the end of the base's deaths. How could they not be pleasantly surprised? The was also greatly. But the school was fine, which made him sigh in relief. The loud voice roared, "Alert!" Immediately, more than a dozen team members were on guard with guns. The captain led the rest of the team members to carefully approach the corpse of the mutated zombie. They didn't see it clearly until they got closer. The corpse had been split in half from head to tail by something. And the two halves of the corpse seemed to have been corroded by something. Blood was still bubbling on it. All the team members were very confused. One must know that this mutated zombie wasn't even afraid of rockets and Barrett. But now it was killed by something in just a few seconds. How could they not be excited? But in addition to the excitement, they were all puzzled. What on earth was it that could kill such a powerful mutated zombie? The captain took a look at his surroundings and loudly ordered, "Everyone get ready. Search carefully, be careful." The team members immediately nodded. Shocked, they searched around. The zombie farm was not big, so they finished searching quickly. "Captain, we didn't find anything." The captain narrowed his eyes. "Let's find those 3 corpse rearers and ask them." A team member said, "I've already looked. The 3 of them are not here. At this time they may have gone to clean up everywhere." The captain said loudly, "Sniper, what did you find over there?" The sniper replied, "I don't have a view of the zombie farm here." The captain immediately shouted, "Expand the search area to a diameter of 1 kilometer." The team members responded and searched outside the zombie farm. The sniper also looked around. But after a while he still found nothing. 10 minutes later, the supporting army and other zombie hunters also arrived. They were also shocked when they saw the 2 halves of the huge corpse. Who did it? Then they expanded the search area to the whole area A. Nothing was found. They reported this matter to the head of the base. So the head of the base ordered to expand the search area to the whole base. However, after 2 days of searching, there was still no clue. This became another mysterious incident. At the same time, people in Area A could not help but associate this with the mysterious incident a year ago. In the meeting room of the zombie hunters. The captain and 20 zombie hunters were having a meeting. The captain said loudly, "Tell me, what do you all think?" The vice captain, who was a little sissy, said, "Captain, I think this incident should be related to the mysterious incident a year ago." A team member nodded, "Indeed. A year ago, a mysterious creature appeared and blasted the dynamometer away. At that time we searched for 10 days, but there was no result. The incident this time is exactly the same as the previous one." Another team member said, "And this time the creature seems to be more powerful. Everyone should have seen that when the mutated zombie entered the zombie farm, it was blasted out almost instantly. It also crashed through the wall and flew more than 20 meters. After that, the mutated zombie mutated twice. It should have been more powerful. But it was killed in an instant." The team members nodded. "It is indeed more powerful than the last time." Someone felt uneasy and said, "There is such a powerful mysterious creature around us, and it comes and goes without a trace. It is very unsettling. I don't know if this mysterious creature is good or bad, friend or foe." Another team member retorted, "At least it killed the mutated zombie yesterday and saved the whole base." Hearing this, the captain nodded slowly. "It hid in the base for a year and did not do anything evil. And now it saved the whole base from danger. It seems that this mysterious creature is not malicious. It just doesn't want to be found." The vice captain, who was a little sissy, said, "Captain, if it doesn't want us to find it, then should we stop searching? Otherwise, if we anger it, I am afraid the consequences are not something we can bear." The captain pondered for a moment. He nodded, "I will report everyone's thoughts to the head of the base and see what they decide." Chapter 7. The captain reported the thoughts of the team members to the head of the base. In the end, the head's reply was, Stop searching on the surface, but secretly send people to investigate. The captain had to obey the order. On the third day, all the team and army returned to their posts. Everything in the base seemed to have returned to normal. However, the reappearance of the mysterious creature and the instant killing of the mutated zombie quickly spread in Area A and even the entire base. Immerse and his two colleagues, crippled Old Li and cross-eyed Xiao Dou, didn't return to the zombie farm until now. As a result, they were reprimanded by the zombie farm leader. You three can't even raise pigs properly. What else can you do? Crippled Old Li and cross-eyed Xiao Dou both felt wronged, but they didn't dare to say a word. This was definitely a natural disaster. What could they do? Immerse could only smile bitterly in his heart. He just wanted to test his strength at that time. He didn't think so much. He didn't expect that with one kick the pig shed collapsed and the wall was broken. If he had known, he would have been gentler. The leader continued to reprimand. The three of you are not nimble and have no strength. That's why you were arranged to raise pigs and zombies. I didn't expect that you could even raise a pig and lose it. Fortunately, it was a pig that was lost. If it was a zombie, the three of you would have made a big mistake. As he spoke, he saw the wronged expression on the faces of the two zombie farmers. He shook his head and his anger subsided a little. He said, I know you feel wronged. You don't want to raise pigs and zombies. But tell me, with your ability, what else can you do? If you guys were like that mysterious creature and could kill the mutant zombies, then you guys would have been the captain of the zombie hunters. Not to mention a captain, maybe the head of the base would be yours. Crippled Old Li and cross-eyed Xiao Dou could only bow their heads and say nothing. It was true that they were useless. But there was no need to be so blunt. It was too hurtful. Immerse also lowered his head. He felt a little ashamed and said, Leader, you flatter me too much. I'm not cut out to be the head. Hearing this, the leader's anger that had just been suppressed rose again. I say, Immerse, oh Immerse, you want to be a blow-up doll just because I gave you a balloon, right? Don't you have any idea how capable you are? Do you really think you are that mysterious creature? If you do, I'll kowtow to you right now. Immerse felt even more embarrassed. He waved his hand repeatedly and said, Leader, how can I do that? Scram. The leader was instantly infuriated. He wished he could slap this brat to death. This kid was usually a little silly. Who would have thought that at such a crucial moment he would be so infuriated? Old Li and Lil Do wanted to laugh, but they didn't dare to show it on their faces. The leaders also felt that they had lost face. Glaring at the two men, he roared, I'll give you 3 nights to catch all the pigs. If there's one less, I'll feed you to the zombies. The two men hurriedly left the leader's office. Outside the house, she found Immerse. Little Bean complained. Is there something wrong with your head? You dare to take advantage of your leader? Old Li also shook his head and sighed. The leader is angry and you're adding fuel to the fire. Immerse chuckled and said, That's right. This is a natural disaster. What does it have to do with the 3 of us? He scolded us as if we were his grandsons. I just wanted to vent for everyone. The 2 men shook their heads. Thank you for your kindness, but we appreciate it. Don't be stupid in the future. If we really angered the leader and kicked us out of the zombie farm, we'll probably starve to death. The base doesn't keep idle people. What could Immerse say? He could only shrug his shoulders and say, okay. But in his heart he sighed, I'm just telling the truth. Is honesty not allowed in the apocalypse? When Immerse and the other 2 went to catch the pigs, discussions about the mysterious creature could be heard everywhere. At the school next to the zombie farm, Immerse and his 2 colleagues were chasing and intercepting 2 pigs on the sports field. The 3 of them were sweating profusely. In this cold winter, steam was rising from the heads of the 3 of them. On the 2nd floor of the teaching building, several teachers looked at the 3 people and 2 pigs on the playground. They all thought it was funny. A teacher laughed and said, The mutated zombie 2 days ago crashed into the pig shed of the zombie farm and broke through the wall. The pigs inside all ran out. Fortunately, it was the pigs that ran out. If it was a zombie, it would be over. Another teacher said, Teacher Zhang, what happened 2 days ago was very dangerous, have you heard? Of course, I heard that the mutated zombie almost came to the school. If it wasn't for the mysterious creature that suddenly appeared, I'm afraid we would be zombies now. Not only us, if the school was infected, the entire base would be finished. Speaking of this, several people showed a look of fear. If that's the case, it's all thanks to that mysterious creature. At this time, a female teacher wearing bottle-bottomed glasses hesitated for a moment and stopped. One of the teachers noticed this and asked, "What's the matter? Teacher Wang, what's wrong? Look at you, you're in a daze. Are you scared by the mysterious creature in your dream?" Another teacher joked. The female teacher with glasses gathered her courage and said, "It wasn't a dream, I really saw it." Hearing this, everyone looked at each other. Teacher Wang's class was on the 3rd floor. And when the incident happened 2 days ago, she was in class. Speaking of which, she could see the incident through the window on the classroom door. Thinking of this, several teachers were excited. "Teacher Wang, tell us, what was that mysterious creature like?" The female teacher shook her head. "That is not a mysterious creature, it should be a human." "A human? How is that possible?" "Teacher Wang, you must have seen wrongly." Those teachers expressed their disbelief. No wonder they didn't believe it. How could a human be so strong? Their doubts aroused the female teacher's stubbornness. She pushed her bottle-bottomed glasses and said firmly, "That was indeed a human." Hearing this, the teachers were all stunned. They all knew that Teacher Wang was an honest person. They had never seen her joke. Nor had they seen her lie. Could it be that it was really a human? Thinking of this, the teachers suddenly burst into an uproar. "Teacher Wang, are you sure you didn't see wrongly? Tell us, what did that human look like? Was it a man or a woman?" The female teacher thought carefully for a moment and shook her head again. "It was too far away and I'm short-sighted. I only saw a blurry figure." Everyone looked at each other. Seeing that Teacher Wang was so determined, they believed her even more. But how could a human have such strong strength? How could they have such strong combat power? A moment later, a male teacher pointed at the 3 zombie rearers who were catching pigs on the field. He asked tentatively, "Teacher Wang, do you think it was them?" Hearing this, the other teachers roared with laughter. In the base, besides the old people, zombie rearers were the most useless. It was more convincing to say that it was done by the school children than zombie rearers. Teacher Wang carefully looked at the 3 people on the field. After a moment, she shook her head. She said, "I don't know." One of the teachers felt that it wasn't good to talk about people behind their backs. "I'd stop talking. It won't be good if they hear it." Another teacher laughed and said, "What are you afraid of? They are almost 200 meters away. Are you afraid that they can hear us?" The other teachers also laughed. But they didn't say anything else. On the field, Immorse raised his head and intentionally or unintentionally glanced at the teachers in the aisle of the teaching building. His genes had been strengthened to the limit and he really heard it. He thought to himself that it was a close call. It seemed that he had to be more careful in the future. Chapter 8. The news that the mysterious creature mentioned by the female teacher was a human quickly spread. Now almost the entire base knew about it. Most people scoffed at it. How could a human be so powerful? But a small number of people believed it. The head of the base also called the female teacher over and talked to her several times. But other than seeing a blurry figure, she couldn't say anything valuable. The head of the base could only give up. Next to the warehouse not far from the zombie farm, Immorse said in his mind, "System, sign in." This was the first time he had signed in at a warehouse in 2 years. He didn't think the warehouse was an important place. Signing in here probably wouldn't give him anything good. He would waste a sign-in opportunity. He just happened to pass by here today and wanted to give it a try. If he couldn't get anything good, he wouldn't come here in the future. Sign-in successful. Sign-in location, warehouse. Sign-in reward, 1 personal warehouse. Personal warehouse. Immorse was puzzled. He checked the system backpack in his mind. There were a total of 100 slots in the system backpack. Each slot could only hold 1 item. Now that he had put in some clothes, food, water, and more than 50 bottles of recovery potions, there were only 10 slots left. In the 88th slot, there was a small warehouse that was the same shape as the warehouse. He focused on the warehouse and a row of words appeared on it. Personal warehouse. Can store 1,000 items. Can only be opened near the warehouse. Seeing this, a smile appeared on Immorse's face. He had a headache before because the system backpack only had 100 slots, which wasn't enough. He didn't expect to get a personal warehouse just like that. The capacity was 10 times that of the system backpack. Although the setting can only be opened near the warehouse, was a pain in the ass. But the warehouse was only 500 meters away from the zombie farm, so it was very convenient for him to come here. With a thought in his mind, he stored the drumsticks, hams, skewers and other food he had saved over the past 2 years into his personal warehouse. The personal warehouse was the same as the system backpack and food wouldn't go bad. The skewers were hot when they were put in and no matter how long they were taken out they would still be hot. They tasted exactly the same as when they were freshly baked. Next he stored more than 20 bottles of water and more than 50 bottles of recovery potions that he got from signing in. As a result, his backpack was almost emptied. Now that he had a personal storage unit, he could store more food and water. This way, if they were to leave the base in the future, at least they wouldn't have to worry about food and water. After signing in, he was about to leave. Not far away, a few middle-aged men were using forklifts to pull a few boxes over. They discussed as they walked. Old Fong, that mysterious creature, is actually a human. Do you believe it? I think it's possible. If he wasn't a human, how could he have hidden in the base for a year without being discovered? I didn't believe it in the past, but now that I think about it, it's because everyone thought that he couldn't be human, that he could hide for more than a year without being found. No matter what, he saved the lives of 100,000 people in our base. You're exaggerating. At the very least, he saved more than 5,000 people in Area A. As they spoke, they saw Immorse standing in front of the warehouse. Old Fong joked. Xiaomo, don't tell me that the powerhouse who saved more than 10,000 people in Area A is you? Old Fong was one of the few people who often joked with Immorse about the warehouse. The two had a good relationship. Immorse puffed out his chest, raised his head and put his hands behind his back. He had the demeanor of a master. He asked. What? Don't I look like one? Ha! Old Fong and the others were amused and laughed. You brat, you're so arrogant. I think the catchphrase of your zombie farm leader is right. Give you a balloon and you can be a blow-up doll. Ha! The crowd roared with laughter again. Immorse said with a deadpan expression. In this doomsday, blow-up dolls are also rare. Everyone laughed again. The people in the warehouse didn't discriminate against zombie farmers. So when he was with them, Immorse was more relaxed. The next day, Immorse went to the warehouse to sign in again. The results showed. Sign-in failed. Immorse could only shake his head with a wry smile. Some places could sign in repeatedly, and some places could only sign in once. Since the mutated zombie incident, Immorse had become more cautious. Every day apart from his daily work he would sign in silently. The laboratory was still the place where he signed in the most. Most of the rewards he received were Titan Dragon Gene enhancers. But now his strength had increased to the limit. It was no longer effective to inject this enhancer. So he stored all these enhancers in his personal warehouse. Maybe they would be useful in the future. In addition to the Titan Dragon Gene enhancer, what he received the most was the brain cell enhancer. Through the injection of the brain cell enhancer, his psychic power was constantly increasing. The range of his psychic power was also constantly expanding. Spring passed and autumn came. Time flew. In the blink of an eye, another 3 years had passed. This was already the 5th year he had signed in. For 5 years he had signed in every day. Never stopped. There were more and more items signed in. Even more than half of his personal storage had been filled. There were more than 500 bottles of water and more than 200 bottles of recovery medicine. There was also enough food for him to eat for a month. Now, through the continuous injection of brain cell enhancers, the range of his psychic power had already reached a radius of 300 meters. Within 300 meters he could control anything under 30 kilograms. At night the wind was strong. Immorse sat on the bed. But his psychic power was controlling a tree 300 meters away from the zombie breeding field. With a move of his psychic power, the 2 branches on the tree began to attack and block like a fencing player's sword. Controlling the branches to fight each other was the main method he used to practice his psychic power control. Through this method he could continuously increase his control over his psychic power. The soldiers patrolling under the tree passed by. When they heard the sound they looked up. They said, "It's so windy tonight." Then they continued to patrol. On this day a shocking news broke out in the base. When Immorse went to feed the zombies as usual, he heard a conversation between 2 teachers on the school field. When the laboratory was developing antibodies, they accidentally discovered a new medicine. This new medicine has a certain chance of stimulating the potential of human cells, strengthening human genes and greatly increasing strength. Are you serious? Isn't this too sci-fi? Of course it's true. I heard that a volunteer has already succeeded in strengthening. Now he can punch with 500 kilograms of strength. 500 kilograms. The teacher immediately exclaimed in a low voice. Stronger than the loudmouth zombie captain. The previous person said, the first phase of clinical trials is now underway. It's estimated that it won't be long before everyone can be injected with this enhancer. If that's the case, we won't have to be afraid of zombies in the future. Hearing this, Immorse nodded secretly. Those guys in the laboratory had finally done something right. In fact, only a month later, the base leader personally announced the gene enhancer. This matter caused an uproar in the entire base. They had been suppressed by zombies for too long. Many people felt that the future was gloomy. But now with the gene enhancer, the strength of human beings would be greatly increased. This brought a glimmer of hope to people who had been suppressed for too long. Another month later, people in the base had begun to inject the gene enhancer. Chapter 9. The gene enhancers produced in the laboratory were given priority to the corpse hunters. The entire base from Area A to Area T. A total of 20 corpse hunters. More than 400 corpse hunters were injected with gene enhancers. In the end, 15 corpse hunters were successfully strengthened. In the corpse hunters in Area A, the loudmouth captain was not strengthened successfully. Instead, the slightly sissy vice captain was strengthened successfully. This was a surprise to everyone. Next, the 15 corpse hunters tried to form a team and go out. They killed in all directions outside the base. They were successful in every endeavor. The 15 people killed more than 500 zombies in 3 days. And no one was injured. This news greatly excited everyone's hearts. When they returned, they were welcomed by the people of the base. Immorse was on the road in front of the corpse farm, watching the 15 people with smiles and excitement on their faces. He thought to himself, these people seem to be a little arrogant. They were so complacent with only 500 kilograms of force. But it had nothing to do with him, so he continued to sign in silently. Soon after these people who were successfully strengthened went out, they were not simply catching a few zombies back but hunting zombies on a large scale. Therefore they were given a resounding title, Corpse Hunters. They were also personally rewarded by the head of the base. The experts of the base came to a conclusion after data deduction. Corpse hunters could continuously stimulate the potential of the human body through high-intensity training. Thus, their strength would continue to increase. Through a large amount of data collection, calculation, and deduction, they found that the corpse hunters should be able to strengthen their strength to about 5,000 kilograms. This was the limit. So they divided the corpse hunters into 10 levels according to their strength. Every 500 kilograms was a level. Level 1 corpse hunters had 500 kilograms of force. Level 2 corpse hunters had 1,000 kilograms of force. And so on. Level 10 corpse hunters had 5,000 kilograms of force. At the same time, they developed a new strength tester for the corpse hunters. The maximum value of the strength tester could reach 10,000 kilograms. This greatly stimulated those corpse hunters. They continued to increase the intensity of their training. And the effect was also significant. Through training, their strength continued to increase. On the 5th day after the injection, the first corpse hunter to break through 600 kilograms of force appeared. A month after the injection, the first corpse hunter to break through 700 kilograms of force appeared. 3 months after the injection, the first corpse hunter to break through 1,000 kilograms appeared. He became the first level 2 corpse hunter in the entire base. The entire base was once again in an uproar. Everyone could see the dawn of the future. Once again, the chief of the base personally rewarded this level 2 zombie hunter. However, to everyone's surprise, the first level 2 zombie hunter turned out to be the slightly effeminate vice captain. He had a domineering name, Wuxia. Now that he had been promoted to a level 2 zombie hunter, he had been promoted to the vice captain of the body hunters. Immorse stood at the entrance of the corpse farm, watching Wuxia pass by. He thought to himself, this giant woman's strength of 1,000 kilograms is level 2. What level should I be? His strength should be at least 2,000 kilograms. It was about level 4 or 5. Should I find another chance to test it? When he thought of this, his heart began to stir. That afternoon, while everyone else went to the cafeteria to eat, Immorse went to the gym alone. There were still 3 hunters training in the gym. Nowadays these hunters were all training maniacs. Immorse did not act rashly. Instead he picked up a rag and began to wipe the fitness equipment. The 3 hunters were training and chatting at the same time. When they saw Immorse come in, they only glanced at him, then ignored him and continued to chat. Immorse was just a corpse farmer. On the other hand, they were already high and mighty zombie hunters. The two had no interaction at all. Naturally, there was no need to pay attention to them. Half an hour later, the 3 of them came to the dynamometer one after another. It was a habit of all hunters to test their strength after every training. Bang, bang, bang. The 3 of them hit 880 kilograms, 970 kilograms, and 834 kilograms respectively. Damn, you're about to be promoted to level 2. Only 30 kilograms more. Kid, you're about to become the second zombie hunter to be promoted to level 2. Awesome. The 2 hunters who only hit 800 kilograms were a little envious. 970's face was also filled with joy. But he pretended to be modest. You guys will be soon too. As they spoke, the 3 of them left the gym. When they passed by Immorse, they completely treated him as air. Immorse did not mind. After they left, he came to the dynamometer. He glanced at the screen of the dynamometer. On the screen, it showed that one of the hunters hit 834 kilograms. Immorse clenched his right fist and took a breath. Then he threw a punch. It hit the target in the middle of the dynamometer. Bang! There was a loud sound. The number on the dynamometer's screen changed rapidly. After a while the number stopped. 2,613 kilograms. Immorse saw this number and was a little surprised. In order to avoid making too much noise like last time, he only used 50% of his strength. He did not expect it to hit 2,613 kilograms. This made him lick his lips uncontrollably. He used his telekinesis to sense that there was no one nearby. He clenched his right fist again. It seemed that this dynamometer was quite sturdy. Let's try again. Thinking of this, he shouted in a low voice. He suddenly threw a punch. This time he used all his strength. Bang! The number on the dynamometer's screen changed rapidly again. After a while it stopped again. 5,499 kilograms. Looking at this number, Immorse's eyes widened. According to the level that the experts had deduced, 5,000 kilograms of force meant that he was a level 10 hunter. And as early as 3 years ago he had already strengthened his body to the limit. In other words, at that time, before the concept of hunters existed, he was already level 10. With excitement, he tried 5 more punches in a row. Bang 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 bang. Every punch weighed 5,499 kilograms. Immorse understood. The limit that he had always felt was 5,499 kilograms. It seemed that he was now the zombie hunter's ceiling. Thinking of this, Immorse felt a little satisfied. When most of the hunters were only at the lowest level of level 1, he had already reached level 10. Felt pretty good to be the ceiling. But even so, Immorse still did not intend to expose himself. The other hunter's improvement was traceable. He suddenly stood out and was already the zombie hunter's ceiling. This would inevitably arouse suspicion. And life was already so difficult, so he did not want to hurt them. Moreover, was a level 10 zombie hunter very powerful? If he really went out of the base, how far could he go in the face of thousands of zombies? So, it was better to continue hiding. It was still the same sentence. Wouldn't it be better to hide until he was invincible? In the following days, the body hunters began to break through to level 2. In just over a month, the body hunters had 3 level 2 zombie hunters. Now, the body hunters had a total of 4 level 2 zombies. The rest had basically reached more than 900 kilograms of force and would break through soon. The strength of the body hunters had greatly increased. They went out of the base to hunt more and more zombies. In these 3 months, the body hunters had killed tens of thousands of zombies. Such a result made the entire base rejoice. The leader of the base had already ordered all resources to be concentrated in the laboratory. Let them produce gene enhancers with all their strength. Strive to inject all 30,000 troops with gene enhancers within a month. Inject all 100,000 people in the base within half a year. As soon as this order was issued, the people in the base were excited again. Everyone had a chance to become stronger. Everyone had a chance to become a zombie hunter. How could this not make them excited? However, what they did not know was, as the body hunters were hunting zombies on a large scale outside, a huge crisis was quietly approaching. Chapter 10. While everyone in the base was filled with excitement, a crisis was quietly approaching. On this day, Immerse wandered around Area A for half an hour. In the end, he decided to sign in at the laboratory. System sign in. Sign in successful. Sign in location, laboratory. Sign in reward, 1 brain cell enhancer. Immerse was overjoyed. Now that his body had been strengthened to the limit, he couldn't continue to strengthen it. But his brain cells were far from the limit. It was just that the brain cell enhancer could only be signed out occasionally. How could this not make him excited? Returning to the zombie farm, he injected the brain cell enhancer. He felt a heat in his head. It was also a little swollen. But this feeling only lasted for 5 minutes before disappearing. His psychokinesis increased by a few notches. He tried to spread his psychic power out. Everything within a radius of 350 meters could be seen. He estimated that after a few more injections, this range would be expanded to 400 meters. When he went to feed the zombies in the afternoon, as soon as he opened the door of the zombie room, the zombie roared and wanted to pounce on him. Immerse smiled faintly. His psychic power instantly spread out and pressed against the zombie. The zombie immediately retracted its claws and retreated in fear. In the end, it shrank in the corner. It didn't dare to move. This was the deterrence Immerse's powerful psychic power had on the zombies. Although the zombies didn't have intelligence, their brains were still releasing brainwaves. Immerse used his powerful psychic power to affect their brainwaves. He activated the area of their cerebral cortex that controlled fear. This made them feel fear. If others saw that the zombies without any intelligence would be so afraid of Immerse, they would probably be so shocked that their jaws would drop to the ground. That night, the moon was bright and the stars were sparse. It was late at night. Suddenly an ear-piercing alarm sounded. It pierced through the night sky. It echoed over the entire base. Everyone in the base was awakened. Then the sound of a loudspeaker sounded. All residents close the doors and windows and stay at home. Don't go out before the alarm is lifted. All residents close the doors and windows and stay at home. Don't go out before the alarm is lifted. Immerse was also awakened. He rubbed his sleepy eyes. He thought to himself that it couldn't be that those guys in the laboratory had created another mutated zombie, right? However, the alarm didn't come from the laboratory. Instead, it came from Zone T. Immerse wondered if he should go over and take a look. At this time, the cadaver hunters in Area A who were passing by outside the corpse farm heard calls from their walkie-talkies. Zombies appeared in T District's residential area. All patrols, body hunters and the body hunters, go to support them immediately. Immerse was shocked when he heard the voice. *CK, why did zombies suddenly appear in the residential area? Could it be that the zombies from the T District zombie farm had escaped? And from the sound of it, it wasn't a small group of zombies. Otherwise, there was no need to summon the body hunters' patrol teams and even the body hunters from Area A. He wondered what the situation was like. Immerse thought for a moment, then immediately put on his clothes and stood up. He quietly slipped out of the corpse farm. At the same time, in the residential area of District T, about 50 people from the T District's patrol team and the body hunters were waiting at the entrance of the residential area. However, their eyes were filled with grief, anger, and despair. There were 20 buildings in the entire residential area. At this time, the screams of humans and the roars of zombies were constantly coming from the 5 buildings in front of them. There were already hundreds of zombies in the yard rushing towards the entrance. In the residential building behind, the residents wanted to escape, but there were zombies everywhere downstairs. They could only hide upstairs. With the feeble strength of the T District's patrol team and the body hunters, it was impossible to rescue the people in the residential building behind them. At this time, screams came from the 6th building behind them. Oh no, the 6th building has also been breached. One of the cadaver hunters cried out in shock. Everyone in the T District's body hunters heard this and their faces turned ugly. The captain's eyes were red. He called out in a hoarse voice, "The sixth building has been breached. Backup requesting backup, why aren't they here yet?" A voice came from the walkie-talkie. "The other district's body hunters and patrol teams are rushing over. The army stationed at the city wall is also rushing over." Hearing this, the captain's eyes were filled with despair. When the army arrived, the thousands of people in the residential area would probably be infected. At that time they would no longer be able to stop these zombies. He asked again, "Where are the body hunters?" The voice from the walkie-talkie replied, "The body hunters are rushing over at most 5 minutes." Hearing this, the captain's despair lessened slightly. At the same time, Immorse was also rushing towards the T District. Every step he took was 50 meters. The A District's body hunters were originally ahead of him. However, he had already quietly overtaken them and left them far behind. At this time, the nearby district's body hunters and patrol teams had already arrived. They quickly surrounded the entire residential area. They climbed up the wall and used their rifles to clear the zombies in the yard. However, there were too many zombies in the yard. There were only about 500 people in the corpse hunting team and the patrol team. Moreover, as long as the zombies weren't hit in the head, they wouldn't fall down. Not all of the team members were like sharpshooters who could hit the head with every shot. Therefore, these body hunters and patrol teams couldn't clear the zombies quickly. At this time, screams came from Building 7. Everyone's heart trembled. Creak. At this time, 3 specially reinforced black military vehicles stopped at the entrance of the residential area. Seeing the 3 military vehicles, everyone was overjoyed. The body hunters are here. The body hunters are finally here. The body hunters are outside the base hunting zombies by the hundreds and thousands. With them here, the residential area is saved. The T District's body hunters captain hurriedly went up to greet them. After a brief introduction, the body hunters entered the residential area. Although they also had guns on them. However, they were mainly cold weapons such as knives and axes. Crack. The body hunters' long axes directly cut a terrifying bloody hole in the head of a zombie. Blood gurgled out. Another flying kick landed on the head of another zombie. These 2 zombies suddenly fell to the ground. They couldn't get up again. The other team members also brandished long axes or long swords and killed their way into the residential area. The zombies in the courtyard of the residential area were instantly killed as if they were crushing dry weeds and smashing rotten wood. Corpses were strewn all over the ground. The patrol team and body hunters at the entrance hurriedly followed behind to help. With the addition of the body hunters, the speed of clearing the zombies was very fast. At this rate, the zombies in this residential area could be cleared in at most 20 minutes. However, things weren't as simple as they thought. When they arrived in front of Building 5, a large number of roars suddenly burst out from the building. Hundreds of zombies rushed out of the building. And the zombies in the other buildings seemed to have been premeditated. They all rushed towards the body hunters. In just 2 minutes there were 600 to 700 zombies. Under the moonlight, the shadows of the corpses were everywhere. It was extremely terrifying. The body hunters were already surrounded. The body hunters' hearts all trembled. Although they had hunted hundreds and thousands of zombies in the past, those zombies basically didn't have consciousness. They were led by the nose by them. However, these zombies today seemed to have already discussed and set up a trap. They were waiting for them to go in. How could zombies be so smart? Helpless, they could only hide in 3 rooms. They relied on the terrain to defend. At this time, screams and roars could be heard from Building Number 8. Building 8 had also fallen into the enemy's hands. At the same time, Immorse was about 2 kilometers away from this residential area. Chapter 11. T District, Residential Area. 7 out of the 20 buildings had already fallen. In the apocalypse, the doors of the residential buildings were specially reinforced. The doors and windows of every house were also covered with 5 mm thick steel plates. Even an axe would have a hard time cutting through them. No one knew how these zombies broke into the residential buildings. The body hunters were all proud of themselves when they hunted zombies outside. But now these zombies seemed to be organized and disciplined. They set a trap to lure the body hunters over. The body hunters and T District's body hunters were trapped in 3 rooms in Building 3. They could only rely on the terrain to defend. Just as they were having a hard time defending, bad news came one after another. Building 8 had fallen. Another 5 minutes later, Building 9 had fallen. There were at least 100 people in each building and at most 300 people. After each building fell, there would soon be 100 to 300 more zombies. And the residents of these residential buildings, after being infected and turned into zombies, would rush towards the body hunters. There were more and more zombies around, and there were already thousands of them. Even the hunter squad was in despair at this time. "Captain, what should we do?" Vice Captain Guijutao's feminine voice came. The body hunters also looked at their captain. The captain of the body hunters blew off a zombie's head with a shot and roared, "Hold on, wait for the army's support." Everyone was silent. They relied on the terrain so they could still hold on. But the army was stationed near the city wall. It would take about 20 minutes for them to arrive. And the few buildings behind them were constantly being breached. By the time the army arrived, the dozen or so buildings behind them would be completely destroyed. But what could they do? In this situation, they were already extremely lucky to be able to keep their lives. What else could they do? Around the residential buildings, the body hunters and patrol members saw more and more zombies in the residential area. They heard more and more screams and roars coming from upstairs. Their eyes were all red. They were angry, but there was nothing they could do. What was despair? Watching tragic things happen, but there was nothing they could do. The feeling of powerlessness filled their whole body. This was called despair. At this time, Immorse had already arrived at the wall of the residential area in District T. In front of him, there were more than 10 members of the corpse hunting team shooting into the courtyard. Immorse leaped up and landed on a nearby parasol tree. He looked inside. Under the moonlight, the shadows of the zombies in the courtyard were like ghosts. With just a glance, he saw more than 200 zombies. Moreover, these zombies seemed to be organized and disciplined as they all ran towards building number 3. There were already thousands of zombies surrounding building number 3. Immorse heard from the nearby body hunters that the body hunters had been surrounded. His heart shuddered. These zombies seemed to have a strong purpose. They were here for the body hunters. It seemed like he had no choice but to make a move today. Although it was his usual style to be as humble as possible. But without the skin, where can the hair attach? If this place was infected, the entire base would be gone. At that time, his comfortable days would come to an end. Thinking of this, he leaped. In an instant, he crossed 50 meters. He jumped over the wall and landed in the courtyard. A few members of the corpse hunting team by the wall suddenly saw a human fly over their heads like a flying immortal. One by one, they were so shocked that their mouths were wide open and their eyes were wide. Immorse landed more than 30 meters inside the wall. More than a dozen zombies nearby saw him and immediately opened their bloody mouths. They stretched out their blood-stained hands and pounced over. Immorse glanced at them and casually picked up an iron chain from a pile of debris by the wall. This iron chain was as thick as an arm. It was more than 20 meters long. Ordinary people couldn't pick it up at all. Immorse picked it up easily. Then he threw it out like a long whip. Woo! This iron chain as thick as an arm actually drew a huge semicircle. It smashed fiercely into the few zombies in front of it. Bang! Those zombies were instantly smashed in the face. Flesh and blood splattered. They were directly smashed into meat paste. Even the cement floor was smashed until it burst open with a bang. It formed a burst mark that was more than 20 meters long and more than a meter wide. Then Immorse swung the iron chain in his hand. It swept a circle. Woo! The dozen or so zombies around were no exception. They were all swept in half at the waist. Immorse dragged the blood-red iron chain and ran straight to the third building in the distance. Clatter! The iron chain rubbed against the ground, emitting sparks from time to time. The dozen or so members of the corpse hunters on the wall saw this scene. They were all dumbfounded. This is the mysterious powerhouse who has been hiding. They knew that this mysterious powerhouse was very strong. But they didn't expect him to be so strong. One iron chain smashed 5 zombies into meat paste. Another iron chain cut more than a dozen zombies in half at the waist. This was obviously more than one level stronger than the members of the body hunters. And when this person appeared just now, he flew over their heads dozens of meters and landed on the ground. Thinking of this, these members of the corpse hunters were even more shocked. Did you see who it was? the captain of the corpse hunters asked. All the members shook their heads. Although the moonlight was bright, it was impossible to see a person's face at a distance of 20 to 30 meters. What's more, Immorse didn't show them his face. The captain of the corpse hunters shook his head. We'll talk about this later. Let's clean up the zombies first. Then he raised his gun and shot at the head of a zombie. These zombies had now been cut in half by the iron chain. But they still used their hands to support themselves on the ground, trying to crawl in the direction of the third building. But the difficulty of the corpse hunters' shooting was greatly reduced. At this time, Immorse was dragging the blood-red iron chain. There were only sparks and no lightning along the way. He ran toward the third building. No matter how many zombies he encountered on the way, he basically threw out the iron chain. It was easy to deal with. And the iron chain he threw out at this time was basically aimed at the zombies' heads. This iron chain as thick as a wrist, as long as it touched the zombies' heads, it would basically explode. The kind that would really explode. Bang 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 bang. Along the way hundreds of zombies died under his iron chain. The whole iron chain had already turned bright red. It was like the iron chain that imprisoned the demons in hell. Clatter. When the iron chain was dragged on the ground, it dragged out a bright red trace. The other corpse hunters and patrol members by the wall had already discovered that a person had jumped into the neighborhood. From afar they could only see this person constantly waving the iron chain in his hand. The heads of the surrounding zombies exploded one after another. Those hundreds of zombies in front of him were simply like mud. They all reacted one by one. Surprised and happy. It's him. That mysterious strong person. *CK, this is too abnormal. This kind of strength, I'm afraid he has already reached level 4, or even level 5 corpse hunters. Unfortunately it's too far, I can't see what he looks like. At this time, Immorse was not far from the third building. But just as he passed by the 9th building he suddenly stopped in his tracks. Looking at the 3rd floor of the 9th building. His Virus X detection could clearly sense that there was a zombie there. The amount of Virus X in this zombie's body was much more than other zombies. In other words, this zombie was many times stronger than normal zombies. Chapter 12. Immorse raised his head and looked somewhere on the 3rd floor of building number 9. Through Virus X he could clearly sense that there was a zombie there. A zombie that was dozens of times stronger than normal zombies. He pondered for a moment and understood. No wonder these zombies seemed to be organized and disciplined. It turned out that this powerful zombie was commanding them. This made Immorse's expression slightly dignified. If he guessed correctly, this would prove a terrible fact. Some zombies already have intelligence. This was definitely not a good thing for the survivors in the base. Thinking of this, Immorse put the iron chain in his hand into the system backpack. With a leap he jumped to the 3rd floor of building number 9. At this time on residential building number 9. All the residents were terrified. They heard the screams and roars getting closer and closer to the building they were in. Their hearts were already drowned in panic and despair. Who could save them? Where are the body hunters? Why haven't the body hunters come yet? A young man was breaking down. It's over, we're all finished. Another middle-aged man shook his head. Whether it was his eyes or his expression, they were all filled with despair. In a room on the 3rd floor. Dad, will we become zombies? A 10-year-old girl tightly hugged her father's arm and asked in horror. Don't worry, the body hunters will protect us. Dad will also protect you. You definitely won't become a zombie. Dad stroked his daughter's head and softly comforted her. However, under the dim light, his tears were already flowing down uncontrollably. His tears were not for himself, but for his daughter. If he dies, he dies, but his daughter is only 10 years old. God, how can you bear to do this? You want me to die 10 times or 100 times, I can die however you want. I just beg you, let my daughter live. The mother next to her was already in tears. She hugged her daughter tightly. Little Yen, don't be afraid, we will be fine. At this moment, bang, the door that was reinforced with steel plates was suddenly knocked open by a huge force. It fell into the room. The mother hurriedly hugged her daughter tightly in the bedroom. Bang, the bedroom door was also blasted open by a huge force. A figure appeared at the bedroom door. He could vaguely see that it was a person with a hole in his head and a face full of blood. The flesh on his face seemed to have been bitten off by something a long time ago. Through the holes on his face one could see the teeth inside. In the bedroom his daughter screamed in horror. His mother's eyes were also wide open. Her gaze was filled with deep fear and grief. She hugged her daughter tightly and kept shaking her head. No, no. The father held a crowbar and stood in front of the mother and daughter. He was not a soldier. He was not a patrol member. He was not a member of the corpse hunters. He was definitely not a zombie hunter. He was just an ordinary person. However, he was a father. The tears on his face were still wet. However, his eyes were filled with anger. Brandishing the crowbar in his hand, he bellowed. Get out of my way. Frem. Chow gun smashed down towards the zombie. However, when the crowbar hit the zombie's head, it only made a muffled sound. The zombie let out a roar from its throat. He kicked at the man. Bang. The man was sent flying and crashed into the wall. Crack. A few ribs in his chest were broken. Puff, cough, cough, cough. A large mouthful of blood spurted out. He coughed violently. The intense pain almost made him faint. However, he couldn't faint. How could he faint? The zombie ignored the man and walked towards the mother and son. However, when it passed by the man hugged its foot. He raised his head with difficulty and said to the woman, Run, run, bang. The zombie kicked the man's abdomen again. The man crashed into the wall again. Crack. Both of his arms and legs were broken. Puff. Blood spurted out of his mouth again. The zombie came in front of the man. There seemed to be a mocking look in his eyes. The man was completely furious. He also let out a beast-like roar. Ah! He opened his mouth and bit the zombie's ankle. He shouted vaguely at the woman. Take her away. The woman's face was covered in tears. An unprecedented power erupted from her body. Holding her daughter, she fled towards the door. However, in front of this obviously mutated zombie, her speed was too slow. The zombie kicked the man 3 meters away and he crashed into the wall for the 3rd time. The paint on the wall was peeled off. Then the zombie grabbed the woman's shoulder. It opened its mouth and bit down on the back of her neck. No. The man, who was almost unconscious, let out a desperate roar from his throat. His eyes were blood red, almost spitting fire. However, with his limbs broken, what could he do? He couldn't do anything. He hated it. He hated his powerlessness. He hated that he wasn't a zombie hunter. He hated that he couldn't protect his daughter. At this moment, a figure suddenly appeared. His speed was extremely fast, not like a human at all. He jumped into the house in an instant. He kicked the zombie's head. Bang. When the zombie's mouth was less than 10 centimeters away from his mother, his head suddenly seemed to be hit by a high-speed boulder. Boom. The zombie's entire head along with its upper body had sunk deep into the wall. A large amount of blood suddenly gushed out from the wall. The zombie's head had been kicked into meat paste by this kick. The whole house was suddenly filled with smoke and dust. The man's already blurred vision only saw a human figure appear. The next moment he had already fainted. The woman also turned her head and looked at the person who saved their family in shock. However, at this moment, because the kick was too powerful, the wall caved in. A lot of the paint on the wall fell off. Dust flew. The woman couldn't open her eyes at all. The next moment, a cold thing was suddenly stuffed into her hand. A voice came, "Take it orally." The woman forced her eyes open a little. She saw that the blurry figure had disappeared outside the door. The woman was stunned for a moment. When the smoke and dust dissipated a little, she looked down at the thing in her hand. She saw that it was a small glass bottle. It was filled with an aquamarine liquid. She didn't know what this liquid was. But since that person had saved them just now, he shouldn't hurt them again. And at this time she didn't know how serious her husband's injury was. There were zombies everywhere outside. It was impossible to find a doctor. The woman only hesitated for a few seconds. She put down her daughter and held up her husband's head. She gave the aquamarine liquid to her husband. Just more than 10 seconds later, her husband, who had been unconscious, woke up. And the bruises on her husband's face were quickly disappearing. The man regained consciousness and hurriedly asked the woman, "How are you and your daughter? Are you hurt?" The woman's eyes were filled with tears. She wiped the blood from the man's mouth and shook her head. "We're fine. How do you feel?" At first, the man still felt that some of his limbs were broken and there was a sharp pain. But soon the sharp pain quickly subsided. In just 5 minutes the pain completely disappeared. He tried to move his arm. He was surprised to find that the place where his arm was broken was as good as new. In surprise he tried to stand up again. In the end he really did stand up. His limbs were as if they had never been broken. The family of 3 were all surprised and happy. They cried tears of joy. They hugged each other. A moment later the man asked, "Who is the person who saved us?" The woman shook her head. I didn't see clearly." The man paused for a moment and said, "In any case, we will remember this kindness for the rest of our lives." Chapter 13. In fact, Immorse did not intend to give his recovery medicine to others. However, that man's behavior couldn't help but move Immorse. So he gave them a bottle. Anyway, there were hundreds of bottles of recovery medicine in his personal storage. He came out of the house and planned to continue to rush to the 3rd building. In his mind he recalled the appearance of the zombie just now. It seemed that it should be a mutated zombie. It was very strong and much faster than ordinary zombies. It should be able to reach about 20 meters per second. But compared to the mutated zombie created in the laboratory more than a year ago, it was much weaker. But the difference was that this wild mutated zombie seemed to be intelligent. It obviously ordered the other zombies to besiege the body hunters. And he himself was constantly infecting these floors. Then more zombies would appear, luring the tiger away from the mountain. The zombies actually knew the art of war. Immorse sighed in his heart. Zombies were not scary, but zombies with culture were scary. Just as he was about to jump down from the 3rd floor, suddenly in the house behind him, a black shadow jumped towards him. This black shadow was also a zombie. A large part of its shoulder was missing. Its left eye had also disappeared. There was also a terrible wound on its face that looked like it was cut by an axe. It was so deep that the bone could be seen. But its speed was extremely fast. Obviously this was also a mutated zombie. Immorse snorted coldly. His body slightly moved to the side and avoided the mutated zombie. At the same time he kicked towards the back of the black shadow's head. With his strength, under this kick the mutated zombie's head would definitely explode. However, at this moment a strange change suddenly occurred. After his right foot kicked over, not only did the mutated zombie's head not explode, instead from the back of its head, a big mouth suddenly opened. In the big mouth, the saliva shone brightly under the moonlight. The sharp teeth were clearly visible. Immorse's kick just happened to land right in the middle of the mouth. The big mouth suddenly closed. Crack. Immorse's entire right foot was bitten off from the ankle. Under the moonlight, the white bones could clearly be seen at the fracture. The mutated zombie's mouth was constantly chewing. The cracking sounds made one's scalp go numb. Immorse felt a sharp pain coming from the wound. The pain was so intense that he almost blacked out and fainted. He still had too little combat experience. In addition, they didn't expect that there would be a big mouth on the back of this mutated zombie's head. After swallowing Immorse's leg, the colossal zombie roared and rushed towards him. Immorse's right leg was already broken. There was no way he could escape. It seemed that he could only watch as the zombie tore him apart. However, right at this moment, his mind moved. His right arm quickly thickened. Rip. His sleeves were torn apart. His entire right arm instantly grew to 3 times its original size. At the same time his right arm was covered with black scales. His right hand had already transformed into a dragon claw. 5 sharp claws, each curved and sharp. Under the moonlight, it shone with a cold light. Titan dragon claw. Immorse clenched his right claw and pushed it forward. He wanted to see how strong the Titan dragon claw was. The big mouth on the back of the colossal zombie's head suddenly opened. With a crack, it bit Immorse's dragon claw. Crack, crack, crack. Only a crisp sound was heard. The colossal zombie seemed to have bitten on an iron stone. It couldn't bite down at all. Immorse understood. The Titan dragon claw's abnormal defensive power, even bullets couldn't penetrate it. Then his right claw casually slashed. A black light flashed. Swish. The colossal zombie's body was easily cut into several pieces. Blood splattered and splashed on the wall of the aisle. It was like a splash ink painting. The Titan dragon claw's sharpness was definitely not lower than the bloodthirsty zombie slayer. And this Titan dragon claw seemed to have a suppressive effect on the zombie's self-healing ability. This suppressive effect seemed to be stronger than the bloodthirsty zombie slayer. After the zombie slayer slashed, the zombie's body would heal itself. But the speed of self-healing was far slower than the speed of corrosion. And now, after his claw slashed, the colossal zombie's body didn't have any intention of self-healing. He moved his mind and the Titan dragon claw retracted. He looked at the broken pieces of cloth on the ground. He shook his head again and sighed. This Titan dragon claw was strong, but it was a waste of sleeves. Then he looked down at the cut on his right foot. He saw the muscles there squirming quickly. It was recovering at a speed visible to the naked eye. In just a short minute his right foot had grown back. Broken limbs regenerated. This was the ability he got after injecting the mutant gecko gene enhancer. With this ability, breaking an arm or a leg was not a problem for Immorse. After his right foot recovered, he didn't immediately go to Building 3. Instead he waited for a moment. He sensed to see if there were other colossal zombies nearby. Sure enough, a moment later he sensed 2 more colossal zombies. But the 2 colossal zombies obviously knew how strong Immorse was. They didn't show up. Immorse stood up and took out a pair of shoes from his backpack to put on. Then with a sudden leap he directly crossed a distance of 50 meters. He jumped from Building 9 to the 4th floor of Building 10. He smashed open a security door with a punch. The colossal zombie in the room couldn't hide and could only let out a beast-like roar. It pounced on Immorse. Immorse didn't want to waste any more time. The Titan dragon claw appeared and slashed out instantly. The colossal zombie's head was suddenly cut into several pieces like a watermelon. Immorse jumped up again. He came to the 7th floor. He pulled out a colossal zombie inside. This time he used the bloodthirsty zombie slayer. The tip of the blade pierced straight into its mouth. He could clearly feel that the zombie slayer instantly absorbed a large amount of blood. Then it turned into a strong acid. Buzz buzz. The colossal zombie's wound was directly corroded into a large hole the size of an arm. Its body also fell to the ground with a bang. Then Immorse stopped for a moment and carefully sensed. There were no more colossal zombies or other ordinary zombies nearby. Then he jumped down from the 5th floor. Boom. After landing, the cement floor under his feet was cracked inch by the impact. Immorse's mouth twitched slightly. The newly grown foot hadn't been trained yet. Being hit by such a strong impact, it was a little painful. Slowed down. He quickly ran in the direction of Building 3. When he was not far from Building 3, he saw the dense number of zombies and couldn't help but gasp. There were probably already thousands of zombies here. They kept roaring and rushing toward the 3 rooms on the 1st floor. Around the room there were already zombies lying on the ground. Blood and broken limbs were left on the ground. These zombies stepped on hundreds of corpses and rushed toward the 3 rooms like a tide. Obviously, these zombies were coming for the body hunters. At the same time, Immorse also sensed that on the 2nd floor of Building 3, there was a colossal zombie. It should be this colossal zombie that was controlling these ordinary zombies. At this time in the 3 rooms on the 1st floor, there were a total of the body hunters, T-area corpse hunters and T-area patrol team, more than 30 people. But these people were already a little desperate at this time. There were so many zombies outside that it seemed like there was no end to killing them. Captain, I'm out of bullets. I only have 13 bullets left. Captain, why isn't the army here yet? Several corpse hunters and patrol team members cried out in despair. The body hunters looked even more dignified. They thought that after becoming corpse hunters, they could do whatever they wanted in front of any zombies. But they didn't expect that they were still too naive. These hunters originally had a bright future ahead of them. As long as they were given some more time, they could continue to become stronger through training. But now I'm afraid they don't have that chance. Especially those level 2 corpse hunters. All of them were unwilling to accept this. They were all corpse hunters. How could they be like ordinary people and be surrounded by zombies like this? Despair is contagious. When a person has despair, it will quickly spread to others. Especially in the current situation. However, at this time, a roar suddenly came from the 2nd floor. Roar, roar, roar. When the zombies heard this roar, they suddenly gave up attacking the 3 rooms. Instead, they quickly turned and left. The 30 people who were already in despair were all stunned when they saw this. Captain, the zombies escaped. Why did they suddenly escape? Everyone was a little confused. But the zombies leaving was a good thing for them after all. The leader of the body hunters put away his despair and said to everyone, Everyone, observe carefully and see what's going on. Everyone immediately carefully looked outside through the windows and the cracks of the door. With one look, everyone, including the members of the body hunters, were stunned. They were all dumbfounded. Chapter 14. When the hunters, catchers, and patrols of Zone T looked out through the cracks in the doors and windows, they saw a strange scene unfolding before their eyes. Everyone was dumbfounded. They saw a figure slowly walking over under the moonlight. And those thousands of zombies were rushing towards this person like a tide. It seemed that the roar on the second floor just now had ordered these zombies to attack that figure. At the same time, in the other buildings around, there were also zombies running towards that figure. And that figure was still standing in the same place. Not panicking. Not in a mess. Not moving. Like a rock in a huge wave. Those thousands of zombies were facing this person. Like thousands of hungry wolves pouncing on a sheep. No matter who it was, they could foresee the consequences of this sheep. However, a strange scene happened. When the thousands of zombies were only about 10 meters away from the man suddenly shouted. Suddenly. Bang, there was a muffled sound. A zombie's head exploded into a cloud of blood mist without warning. Under the moonlight, the blood mist bloomed. And that figure under the moonlight didn't move. Bang, another muffled sound. The second zombie's head also exploded into a cloud of blood mist. Then the third, the fourth, the fifth. Bang, 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 more and more. Faster and faster. The zombies' heads exploded into clouds of blood mist one after another. Thousands of zombies were like firecrackers. Heads kept exploding. Under the moonlight, only clouds of blood mist could be seen spreading. In just 30 seconds, the heads of more than 1,000 zombies actually exploded at the same time. Only then did the bodies of the zombies fall to the ground one after another. In the middle of these more than 1,000 corpses, that figure still didn't move. As steady as an old dog. His figure was in the blood mist that rose around him. He was faintly discernible. At this moment, all the members of the body hunters and the patrol team in Building 3. Their faces were full of shock. On the distant wall, hundreds of other members of the body hunters and the patrol team. They were also full of shock. What did they see? Without moving, he killed thousands of zombies in seconds. This was beyond their understanding. At this moment, the indistinct figure within the blood mist appeared. In their eyes, he was like a god. They were not the only ones. On the second floor of Building 3, the mutated zombie with a huge wound on its neck. Seeing this scene, his grayish-white eyes were also filled with fear. Originally, he thought that except for the hunters who went out to hunt zombies, the rest of the human beings were extremely weak. However, at this moment, this human had unleashed an ability that he could not understand. At this moment, Immorse had a faint smile on his face. He used telekinesis to stimulate the zombies' brain cells. It made all the zombies' brain cells boil. As the pressure in their brains increased, their brains naturally exploded. The range of his telekinesis could reach a radius of 300 meters. Then the range of this move could reach a radius of 300 meters. Therefore, between buildings 1 to 8. In addition to the mutated zombie, all the other 1,700 zombies were cleared by him in one move. One move to kill more than 1,700 zombies. Who else could it be? However, this move really consumed too much telekinesis. In just one move, Immorse felt that more than half of his telekinesis was consumed. At this moment, he looked up at the second floor of Building 3. Then he took a step forward. He jumped to the second floor in 2 steps. However, at the same time as he jumped to the second floor, the mutated zombie had already jumped out. He was about to flee into the distance like crazy. The body hunters and the patrols all looked at each other when they saw this scene. The zombie was scared away. In their understanding, zombies were the living dead. They had no feelings, no emotions. Naturally, they had no feelings of fear. But now they were scared away by that person. This was 2F** King perverted. Seeing this, Immorse shook his head. Can you run away? Then his right hand shook. Crash. A clear and crisp sound rang out. A 20-meter-long iron chain as thick as a wrist appeared in his hand. The iron chain had long been dyed blood red. He jumped. He crossed 50 meters in an instant. In the air, the blood-red iron chain in his hand swung in a huge semicircle. Under the moonlight, it was like a huge blood blade slashing towards the mutated zombie. Its strength was fierce like a giant elephant. Its momentum was fast like thunder. The mutated zombie had no time to dodge. Boom! The iron chain was like a 20-meter-long iron rod. It smashed onto the mutated zombie's head. Boom! The mutated zombie was like a watermelon that was hit by a hammer. It directly exploded. Blood and flesh splattered everywhere. Everyone saw this scene from afar and they were all stunned. Using an iron chain to smash a zombie to explode. What kind of great strength was this? Immorse kept the chain. Using the virus X, he sensed the surroundings. There were no more living zombies. Only then did he move his mind and put the chain back into the system backpack. Then he jumped 50 meters in an instant. With a few ups and downs, he jumped out from the side of the neighborhood wall. On the wall, several members of the corpse hunting team watched the figure leap over their heads. They were all stunned for a long time. After a moment, their throats made a gulp sound. Is he flying? God? Monster? Or mutated human? Until now, the body hunters in Area A had just arrived. They did not see the surging corpse tide and the scene of humans screaming and running for their lives that they expected. Instead, they saw everyone staring blankly in the southeast direction. What's wrong? The loud-mouthed captain hurriedly asked. A patrol member answered in a daze, "What the hell? No, it's God." After Immorse finished dealing with those zombies, he ran towards Area A. Although he did such a big thing, he saved more than half of the neighborhood in Area T and even the lives of the entire base. But he still did not intend to expose himself. Anyway, saving the base was not the first time. The strength he had just shown was completely beyond that of humans and hunters. If it was coveted by someone, it would be very troublesome. One must know that the most terrifying thing in the world was not zombies, but the human heart. It was easy to dodge an open spear, but difficult to guard against a hidden arrow. So what if he was strong? Was Ao Xiaobao strong? Didn't he still die in the hands of Wei Xiaobao? So before he had the strength to absolutely crush all the enemies, he decided to stay in the corpse farm. Raising corpses, feeding pigs and signing in every day. How carefree. Why worry about being plotted against by villains? When he returned to the corpse farm, crippled Old Lee and cross-eyed Little Bean were still hiding in their rooms on tenterhooks. Immorse sneaked back to his room. He looked at the blood stains on his clothes. Shaking his head, he changed out of the clothes and threw them into the system backpack. Then he yawned and lay on the bed. After the battle just now, he basically did not consume much physical strength. But he consumed a lot of psychic power. So he felt a little tired. But just as he was lying on the bed, in his mind, the system's voice suddenly sounded. The sign-in system can now be upgraded. Do you want to upgrade? Immorse was stunned. So the system can be upgraded. You're tuning in to the Zhou Xian's Legacy YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.